Hi, everybody. I would like to revisit a topic that we touch on from time to time, and that topic is privileged identity management or privileged access management. I'm going to be specifically talking about privileged identity management and just in time activation of roles. So, in Azure Active Directory, you have roles, Azure Active Directory roles. You have a global administrator that can do pretty much anything. You have a global reader that can't do anything, but they can look at everything. And then you have specific roles like Exchange Administrator, SharePoint Administrator. You kind of understand what those do. But there's lesser roles. There's User Administrator. There's Groups Administrator. So there's a bunch of these roles, and you can go and look up what they do. And for several years now, Microsoft has been preaching that we all should use only the role that we need. So the concept of least privileged access. So if I need to just manage SharePoint, I should have SharePoint administrator. If I'm just managing users and all their properties, maybe user administrator or one of the other roles. Now, in addition to that, as an aside, a lot of these services like Exchange and Intune and a few others have their own sub roles. These are not Azure Active Directory roles. They're only available inside of that service. And the reason I bring it up is those roles currently are not available for privileged identity management, just in time activation of roles as a role. But you can kind of trick your way into them in using groups, and we'll talk about that as well. So, privileged identity management. It is a way to set up roles such that you can make people eligible for a role if you want to. In fact, you can make their eligibility expire if you want to. Eligible just means that they're allowed to attempt to elevate themselves into that role. And you can make a lot of rules for how people elevate themselves into a role. You can make the elevation seamless, so the user just has to elevate themselves and boom, they're all of a sudden they're a role holder. You can also make sure that roles require, for instance, someone to approve it. Especially for the higher roles, not a bad idea. Global admin, Exchange administrator, SharePoint administrator, because they control so many things, billing administrator, and so forth. You can have people set up to be approvers for those roles. In fact, you could put everybody into a group, assign the group as eligible to that role, and then that makes the users eligible to that role. And you can even make that group of users the approvers. In that case, a user would not be able to approve their own elevation. They would have to rely on one of the other users in the group. They thought of that. Thought you could get around it, couldn't you? So we're going to take a look at Microsoft's implementation of this in just a second. And really, there's two main implementations. One is elevating someone into a role itself, elevating into Exchange admin or SharePoint admin or global admin or whatever it is. The other type of elevation or just in time is using groups. You can actually assign roles to a group as permanent, and then you can have people elevate into the group. This is a good way if people need a lot of permissions on a regular basis. Like if I had a group of people and they all needed user administrator, Exchange recipient administrator, maybe Teams administrator, let's say 3, 4, 5 different roles. Well, to elevate all of those roles, 5 of those roles could take a while. Elevation is not something that happens just like that. It could take a few minutes. And if you add that up times 5, now, we have 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever every time we have to do our job for that day or that week or whatever. So we can actually assign roles to groups as active. So a group has an active role or roles. And then what we can do is not put anybody inside of that group as actively a member of the group. We can make them eligible to be members of that group. So let's take a look and see how to do both of those things. So let's take a quick peek at how to create groups and pin people into roles and pin people into groups. Let's start out just with using roles. So what I'm going to do is come down inside of the Entra ID Admin Center to Privileged Identity Management. It's under Identity Governance, and you can see I have a few things here. I'll move my whole face out of the way here. Oh, come on now. So you can see I have a Discover button, and that just allows me to see if there's anything that I can apply this to. Don't really use that button all that often. The Activate and Manage buttons are the two main buttons. Activate is for me as a user to elevate myself either into a role or a group. And Manage is, as an administrator, to set all of this up. Now, you're going to have to be either a security administrator or a global admin to do this kind of thing, because it is a high-level thing where we're assigning roles, right? So I'm going to click on Manage. I pop over into the management space, and I see roles here on the left. I also see my roles, pending requests, approved requests. You can kind of figure out what those are for. I'm going to click on roles. I do see all of the roles that I have available. And let's say I just want to focus on the application administrator role. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to add an assignment. Now, assignments can either be an eligible assignment or active assignment. Active means you got the role right now. That could time out, but it means you have it right now. We want to stay away from active as much as we can and use the eligible. Eligible is the just-in-time method. Active is fine. If we need to give someone temporary active access, hey, someone needs this administrator for a few hours, we can just assign it quickly for a few hours without requiring them to pin into the role, which they were about to do anyway the second we create it. So those still are useful. So I'll make both kinds. Let me make an eligible assignment first. I'm going to click on the Add button. I got the role here, and I'm going to choose a member. I'll choose a member at random. I have a user called admin user. Why not them? I'll click on Next. Now, next is how are they going to be made? Eligible, active, we said eligible. Permanently eligible? Yeah, you can even time out the eligibility so that they can be eligible for a month and then their eligibility goes away. I'll make it permanently eligible. Now click on Assign. And that's really it. Now this user could pin into that role. So that's pretty simple, but there's more to it. Under Assignments, I see Description and Role Settings. I'm going to click on Role Settings. It's actually the same as this Settings button up here, but the role setting lets me put some other information in place, like when someone activates this role, how long will it last? The default is 8 hours. 4 hours is good. Probably 10 hours is also good. Longer days, you don't want someone having to pin into it twice during the day. You can do that. On activation requires something. Well, let's see what we can do with these. I'm going to click on Edit. So here's how I change the 8 hours from 8 hours to something different. And then on activation, well, require MFA. Great. We probably want to do that. Require justification. No, that's so somebody can actually just type in a justification, or even approval. Then I can choose who can approve. You can't approve your own. You cannot do that, but we can choose some other people. Well, I'll let this person just approve themselves, and they can do it for 8 hours. So that's pretty much it. When they come in here and want to activate the role, they'll click on Activate. They see all of their eligible assignments. I don't have any for this user right now, but they would click on, they would see the application administrator, and over to the right they would see the Activate button. They click on that and then activate it. I'll show you a little demonstration of that here in a second. Okay, I signed in as the user, admin user one. So let's take a look at admin user one's experience in activating the application admin role. So I'm going to go under identity governance again and privileged identity management. I'd encourage you to add this to your favorites if you're going to use it, because you're going to use it a lot, and then it'll show up here under favorites. I will do it this way. And I'm going to click on Activate. You can see I'm logged in as admin user, and there's Application Administrator. It looks like they're also eligible for a Global Administrator, but all they have to do is click on Activate, and they'll get the activation screen. I put down that I needed them to have a reason, so it's going to ask me for the reason. Now, there's no telling how long this takes. It's usually the reason this pops up within a few seconds. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds. Sometimes the service is just busy when you have to get an approver. Sometimes that takes longer. Certain services take longer, like SharePoint sometimes takes up to 15 minutes. So I'm going to type something, and that's just available in an audit, so you can keep track of things. I'm going to click on Activate, and now we see it goes through these different stages. And again, these could take 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Really just depends. So we'll give it some time. Once it gets to stage 3, it usually goes pretty fast. But that's it. Once this is done, this user is now an application administrator, and that will time out, in our case, after 8.5 hours. You notice it automatically refreshes Azure AD or Entra ID, the portal. That's because we need to get a new token. So if we were getting into Exchange and I elevated into Exchange and I already had it open, you might notice you don't have permissions that you want. You may have to refresh it by clicking on the refresh button, the browser refresh button. You may actually have to log off and log back in again to that service. So again, just depends on the service. All right. So let's get back to the demo. We'll take a look at other role settings and groups. Okay, so let's get back to our identity governance, privileged identity management, and let's take a look at a couple more role settings, and then we'll talk about groups. So notice under this manage section here, I have roles and groups. I also have some Azure resources, because now we can actually pin into subscription resources, VMs, networks, things like that. We're going to stick with the Azure AD part of this. So I'll click on Enter Roles again. And again, I can get into roles to assign eligibility. I can approve requests. You see approve requests over here for any roles that I've set up for approvals. I can look at the history of the audits. I'm going to click on roles again under manage, and I see all the roles here, and I want you to take a look at these two columns here. I can see that 2 people are active in the application and administrator, and 1 person is eligible. And as I scroll down, this is something to take a look at, especially when we get down to the global administrator. I don't really want too many active of those, especially after hours. I would assume everyone has expired their PIMs. I probably will have 1 in there. I like to have an emergency account that is for a global administrator that doesn't use PIM, that doesn't require conditional access. We make it an extremely long password. We put auditing on it so we can see if anyone modifies it or attempts to log into it. But you can see that I have 3 other eligible users for the global administrator role. So I'll click on the global administrator role just to see how this one is set up. And I can see that it's set up to require approval for activation. And we have a group of approvers. Good thing for global administrators. In fact, you can have that one group and have everyone approve each other just by making the group itself eligible and the group itself the approvers. Again, you cannot approve your own elevation, so that's safe to do. So we look at some other options here. Assignment, allow permanent eligible, allow permanent active. We can set those to no depending on how important the role is. Expire eligible assignments by default, expire active assignments. Usually active assignments, we want to make that pretty short for the higher level roles. I would keep that at as short as it can go. And then require multi-factor justification. And then here we have some alerts here. So the alerts are, it's a little busy. Role assignment alert, if someone gets assigned, who does it get sent to, right? Notification to the assigned user, are they going to be notified? Request approval, who gets assigned that? Well, we'd want our approvers, the group that we have for that. So, and then send notifications when members are assigned active to a role. Again, same thing. We want admins alerted to that, and then notifications when eligible members activate the role. Probably for regular roles, we don't want to be inundated with that. But for things like global administrator, we probably do want someone to be aware that a new global administrator has just activated their role. So that's pretty simple. For role management, we keep active assignments to a minimum. We allow people to PIM into a role or elevate themselves into a role. And for some of the higher level roles, especially global administrator, we want to make sure that that we're approving those instead of just letting people PIM into it at will. Well, let's go back just a little bit and to the privileged identity management, and I can see groups here. Yeah, groups is something else that you can use. Groups, it's a little weird. There's roles for groups. The roles are you an owner or are you a member? These are the roles that we PIM into. So you can see how this goes. I PIM into the membership or I elevate into the membership of a group. What does that get me? Anything, any rights that group has. So I can assign that group as actually active, to some roles or to something else, access to something. And then I can have people PIM into that group. So I see I have a few here already. Let's walk through actually how to do this because it's a little wonky. First thing I got to do is create a group. So I'm going to go to groups and I'll make a new group called security group called HR admins. Right? And then look at this right here. Microsoft Entra roles can be assigned. You must choose this in order to make a PIM group, even if you're not going to assign it roles, even if you're going to assign this group, some access to a team or whatever you're going to do with it, whatever important thing it's going to do. If you want people to PIM into this group, then you have to activate or you have to allow roles to be assigned to it. You can only do this when you create the group. So do it right now, right when you create it. All right, so we have owners, members, roles. I'm going to leave this how it is and click on create. It's going to tell me if this can be assigned roles. That's not something you can go back on. That's set when it gets created, and that's it. Great. Now I've created it. Well, I'm going to go right back to that group. Actually, let me go to identity governance again, privileged identity management, and I'm going to click on groups, and you might expect to see it under here, but you don't. That's because I have to onboard it into this system. I don't have to use it for PIM. I could have just assigned roles to that group and that's it. But I want to actually let people PIM into the group, so I need to onboard it here. So I'm going to click on Discover Groups. See if I can find it. Here it is, my HR group. I'm going to check it and then click on Manage Groups. It's a weird way to do it, but this is how you make a group PIMable. This is how you allow people to elevate themselves into the membership or the owner of a group. I don't use owner too much. Usually it's just membership, but you can do either one. All right, again, this has nothing to do with assigning it to a role. We could have done that on the other screen. I can still do that at any time. This is just allowing people to PIM into the group, thereby getting any rights that group has, including any roles that I might have assigned to it. So I'm going to click on Manage Groups, and it says, are you sure you want to onboard those groups? I do. Just the one. I'll wait for that to happen. It says it successfully did it. Let me refresh this. All right. So now I don't see it there anymore because it has been onboarded. So I don't want to onboard it again. All right. Now when I refresh, I see HR admins. Great. What do I do now? Well, now I set up the elevation for this group so people can become members of it. So I'm going to click on HR admins. And over on the left-hand side, I see manage roles. This is the weirdest part. Okay? This does not mean Azure Active Directory roles here. What this is for is to allow people to PIM into the quote-unquote role of either owner or member. Got that? So roles here does not mean Azure Active Directory roles. You'll see in a second. I'll click on roles, and sure enough, I see member and owner. I'm going to click on add assignments, and I'll say that I want to make people eligible to be members of this group. So I'll choose member, and then I have to choose a member, and let's see here. I'll choose a user called Beth. I like Beth. HR director. So I click on that, click on next, and again, eligible or active. Active means she's in that group. Eligible means she can PIM into it, and that's really what I want. Notice I can start the eligible assignment and end it if I want to. And I'll click on assign, and now Beth can PIM into that group, and really in the same way that you would PIM into a role. So if I come into my roles, or actually let me just start it again. I like to start it again so you can see what we're doing. So I'm going to click on activate, and I can activate any role that I've been assigned as eligible. I don't have any of those right now. Or if you look over to the left, a group. So if I've been made eligible for a group membership, I would see that group here. So if I were Beth, she would see the HR admins group here, and she would click on it under action. She'd choose activate. Same thing as a role. So that would make her a member of that group. And she would have all the rights that that group has. So that's pretty much it. That's the quick, short version of this. So let's wrap things up. Privileged identity management. In Azure Active Directory really means a couple of things, one of two things. One, it means you can elevate yourself into a role. You can choose people that elevate themselves into a role, making them eligible for a role. You can always make people active as well. You can time out the eligibility. You can time out the actual activation, how long they have to be global admin or application admin. You can do the same thing for time-wise for active assignments. You can say, oh, active assignments will only last so long. So you can do it either way. So you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of different combinations. In addition to that, you can also make people eligible to be a member of a group. And then that would give that person the permissions that that group has. And in turn, you can assign that group to be to have a role at the company, an Azure AD role. Or you could just assign it to one of the roles that's inside one of the services. For instance, you could make it a discovery, e-discovery manager for the compliance center. You could make it a recipient administrator inside of Exchange or inside of Intune. You can make it a device administrator, cloud device administrator. So you can do whatever you want with the groups. Groups are very powerful because you can assign a lot of things to them. And then people can just PIM into the group and then gain access to all of those roles and service roles, Azure AD roles, teams, whatever. So it makes things a lot easier. So if you have certain jobs that require a lot of disparate things, and you don't want to let people do those jobs all the time, you can make a group for that job, assign that group to everything that the users might need, and then make that group eligible for PIM. Now remember, when you make the groups, you have to make them role assignable when you create them. Then you have the option to either assign roles to them or make them PIMable later on. All right, everybody. That'll do it for now. That's a privileged identity management. Not everything in it, but the two big parts of it, the Azure AD role elevations and the group elevations. So that's it for now. Stay safe out there.